I just want to say you did a very good job. So good job. It's that thing where you're actually kind of smart. Things you say make you sound dumb.
Yeah, we both do that.
What's that called?
Nope.
Yeah, but you're a little different, Dad.
Stop saying sure! Oh, it drives me crazy!
Are you seeing clear? Are you seeing clear?
I think most people just ignore the tough question. This isn't Minecraft. This is real life.
You are hilarious.
That was not the dog, Dad. That was you.
Yeah, to solve this, we have to completely ignore the main problem.
That makes literally no sense to me. I just want to die.
And that, my friend, is one of my favorite things about you. Hey, welcome to Renaissance Radio. This is Jeremy, your host. I'm here meeting with Mike Dixon, a very good friend of mine. Very excited to speak with him. I think very good friend. It's funny, you have different kinds of very good friends. I have very good friends that I've had for a long time. Not a lot of them, to be honest with you. I miss you if I haven't seen you in a while. Life is so busy. But then you also have people that you connect with that you're like, this is great. You share maybe a traumatic experience or a great experience. You go to camp together or whatever. Mike and I, it's a little bit of a different connection because we're just so dang similar. I think that's Mike, would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've worked together. We spent time together, and we're just so similar. And like, it's kind of wild. We're both kind of visionaries, and I'll define visionary. Maybe we'll talk about that here in a minute. I have some thoughts that we can go over. But Mike, first of all, I just want to say thank you for meeting with me. I'm really excited that you're here. I think you have a very unique insight into the world, and I don't feel as alone in my thinking when you're sitting here. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and that's it.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Jeremy, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
The studio's tight. I love this.
Thanks,
this podcast
man.
room. It's awesome.
I worked on it over Christmas break. It was something that I knew that I was trading some leisure time for it, but I decided, like, I have a full-time job, you're aware of that, and I couldn't really dedicate, I couldn't do much during the week with this, and so I needed to set up a system that I could rapidly record like we've done, or we're doing today, and then something that I can do, like, kind of on the weekends or the evenings or whatever. But over Christmas break, I didn't miss any family dinners, which was really cool, but I was in here grinding while other people were out sledding, and hopefully it pays off. But I want to just talk about Mike for a second. I know we've heard mostly my voice. We'll get to his voice in a moment. But I want to just talk about how Mike is such a unique guy. It's fun. This is a really, like, narcissistic thing to do. Essentially, I'm going to talk about how great Mike is. But I just spent a minute and a half talking about how similar we are. So this is really cool because I'm going to get to talk about how wonderful you are. But in the back of their mind, they're going, these are things Jeremy appreciates about himself.
This is what Jeremy really likes
What
about
a jerk. Yeah, what a jerk. So Mike is a visionary. I had mentioned that. And if I were to define visionary, in this context, it would be someone who kind of operates in the future. They're thinking about how this decision affects tomorrow, how this conversation affects the relationship over time, how the business is going to grow or shrink or struggle in the future. And, you know, there's a lot of people. Would you kind of define yourself by that definition?
Yeah, most definitely.
You're sitting at the boardroom table and everybody's talking. There's going to be people there that are analytical, that are thinking about the present. They're thinking about the numbers, the cash, the stats. And then there's people who are kind of the historians of the group that are saying, like, how does this relate in the context of the past? But then there's the people in the room that are probably, frankly, the most obnoxious, right? That would be us,
Yeah.
who have this bizarrely clear vision, almost like a TV set, of hypothetical futures that don't exist. And what is that like, Mike, talking to somebody who, first of all, I hope that helps you guys recognize as you're talking to somebody, it's not that Kanye necessarily is out of his mind, although he may be struggling, but it's that he's working in a space that he's having trouble communicating with the people in front of them. So if you're talking to somebody, help bring them home and ask questions about how that context works. But Mike, I want to know, what is that like when you're sitting in a room of, I'll say specifically leaders, not specific leaders, but you've been with a lot of leaders and you're a leader yourself. What is that like trying to portray the future and getting the context right and everything else? What's that feel like? What's it look like? What's it smell like?
Yeah. It's kind of nerve-wracking at times, and I imagine you probably go through the same things, especially if you're meeting with CEOs consistently or owners of companies. But for me specifically, when I start to think about things with people, it's hard for me not to overshare. So that's one common thing I have trouble honing in. I remember my wife, when we first started our business, she would tell me, she'd be like, Michael, I just think you share too much. I think you have too many ideas.
Right.
So then you kind of
too many ideas is how they say it, isn't it?
Yeah,
they
it's
go,
almost like
too many ideas. It's not too many ideas, but that's how it feels.
Like, Mike, you just brought something up to me last week. Why are you bringing something new? Like,
Right.
they're related, I promise. Just give me a second.
Yeah, this this is the Tuesday, February 5th iteration of the story. And I'm now telling you the Thursday, the 17th of March version. They're the same. They're just different. And people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And I think,
whoa,
we got a light change.
That's crazy. All right. Keep chatting for the radio program and I'll get the lights right. So the motion sensor went off, which is a new thing. How fun. All right. Keep going. I'll work on this. Those of you listening in are Hue bulbs did what they're supposed to do when I'm working, but not what we're supposed to do while we're recording. So you were saying it's a little bit nerve wracking and go ahead.
Yeah. So, when I'm meeting with a bunch of leaders or if I'm meeting with people I feel like are important in my life or know more than I do, it's always a little nerve wracking, but I think the most nerve wracking part is trying to communicate it because in your mind, you see things and you see how it can work and you see how it can play out. But how in the world are you going to get that to be able to communicate to the CEO who's thinking about the overall numbers? And I know we talked about this before, but the revenue, a lot of owners are really focused on not only the
they
value.
Have to be.
Yeah,
they have to be. If the money breaks, the whole thing breaks.
Yeah.
But like something you said that was really interesting to me is like, it's scary to share it. And I think if most people, and I'm paraphrasing there, but if most people looked at what we're sharing, they would go, man, he's really struggling to communicate that. But I think the thing that's most difficult is you're coming in cold most of the time. You're coming into a person, you have what is a three-dimensional somewhat vision of what's happening. So if you think of a visionary, it's literally vision. They're thinking in terms of like a photograph. And so they're seeing the furniture, the people, the patterns, those things, and they have to decide. They have a limited amount of time. We have a limited amount of time. When we look at that, we go, are we describing the color of the room? Are we describing the vibe? Are we describing the functional purpose of the room or how much money it's going to make? So it's not a matter of like, can you describe it? Now that is a skill. We have to learn that, and we've continued to learn that. But it would be like saying to you, think about this. If you're an analyst or if you're somebody who focuses on the present or the past, if I said to you, describe your partner, describe your wife, describe your husband, what's the answer to that? Like, the answer is more questions, right? What do you mean? Do you mean like, how does she make me feel? What's her history? How did we meet? You would naturally ask those questions. But for some reason, when people talk to visionaries, they're not in clarifying mode in the same way that they're trying to understand the context of the discussion. And so what you can do if you're talking to guys like us and others is you can ask clarifying questions. That question that pops up in your mind that says, that doesn't make sense to me. Take that a little bit further and say, why doesn't that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me because I don't understand why he's sharing this with me. Okay, so what's the follow-up question to that, Mike? What would you say?
If what?
If you're talking to me and I go, I don't know why he's sharing this, what question do I ask you?
Why?
Yeah, what made you share this?
Yeah.
And that's going to bring context. But people don't do that often. They just sit and stare at you and they go, whoa.
Yeah.
That's so much. And I'm like, that's exhausting.
Yeah. And we can kind of think back because me and Jeremy have a mutual company we worked for before. And Jeremy actually helped me one time when I was talking to some leaders I had some trouble communicating to. And I remember role playing with you, and I just couldn't get the setup right, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I wanted them to hear the whole picture, and I had to get it just perfect.
I got to say, dude, you had such a clear vision.
Yeah.
I mean, you were like honed in.
I could talk to you about it, but when we turned on to, hey, let's just role play this together.
You got 6 minutes or you
I
got
hung
2
up
minutes.
on you.
Yeah. Yeah, he said, I need a break, and he hung up. This is a true story. So there was two things. Like, I think a lot of times people will say to you and to me, they'll say, hey, get your thoughts together and then come back and see me. It's not the issue, actually. Like, there's tons of clarity usually with visionaries. The context of the discussion is the hard part.
Yeah.
And so when we were working on that, it wasn't a matter of like me helping you figure out what to say. You knew what to say. It was like, okay, how do we hone down on 2 or 3 or 4 phrases that first set the tone?
Yeah.
It's almost like, I was talking to the kids about this, and this came up in an episode with my boys. What's the best way to describe a board game? It's such a struggle. When you're trying to teach a game, what always happens is the know-it-all starts talking first. They go to the middle. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. They go to the middle of the game. They're like, okay, so here's the deal. You're going to roll the dice. And you're like, the dice? Like, what dice? So and then someone else, the like analyst, the older daughter, whatever, will step in and go, all right, let's start from the beginning. And then that person gets mad. And that's any family, any age. That's how games work, and that's how business works. So the best way to describe a game is, what type of game are we playing? Is this a role-playing game or whatever? So if I'm describing Monopoly, I'm going to say, this is a turn-based game where you're trying to get a bunch of resources and take them from your teammates. Okay, now we go down here. All right, so you buy properties, sell properties, and you get taxed if you don't own it. Okay, now what? Each person takes a turn. You roll the dice. You go that number. If there's a double, you go again.
Yeah.
That's like, and that's the hard part when you're describing. It's not like that you don't know how to play Monopoly. It's just like,
Yeah.
people are looking at you like you're supposed to explain this complex thing, and they don't give you any clues. They rarely give you clues, do they?
Yeah. The go-to is like when you're specifically board games, just like, hey, let's just play it.
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that sometimes.
Yeah,
with
let's just run this $20 million thing and see how it goes. But leaders
Right.
don't do that usually.
Right.
Usually they're like, well, and then you get just stuck.
Yeah.
You're just stuck. And so I think that's a really important thing to consider when you guys are pitching ideas. If you're a visionary, is set the tone first. Hey, I think I have an idea of how we can holistically grow this program without costing extra money or putting our team at risk, and then stop. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you did.
Yeah.
Right. And you said, and then they said, what? Okay. What's the plan? Well, and you can't answer that yet because you have to tell them the context of the
Yeah,
plan,
and
like
you
we were
have to
talking
set
about.
it,
And you had
yeah.
answers for all these things. And it was like, well, here's some concerns we have to go over. That wasn't the question.
Yeah.
Question wasn't now what concerns. They said, I remember coaching a company, and they said they needed a video. And they're now like they were like a Fortune 100 company now or something. They're all over the country. I had a part in it early, but they were amazing on their own. But they're like, we need a video. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you don't even know what you're saying, right? Like, a video of what? Like, you typing at the computer. And so I actually was hired to do a video and just added clarity into the program. And I just was like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get together for the video. And we ended up doing it. It's just really, really hard. So talk to me a little bit about like your most recent projects. What are some things, we don't have to get into specifics or brands or companies, but what's the excitement? You recently took on a regional role for a company doing something different than what you were doing in the same space, but different. What have been some of your favorite successes in that space? What have been some freedoms or some breath of fresh air or successes that you've really enjoyed?
Yeah, I guess more of a consulting role now than I was actually producing.
Yeah.
So it went from kind of the hustle and the grind to figuring out the grind my way.
Right.
And then having that idea and taking it to not just the industry I was in, but other industries. And it kind of opened up a lot of space. I started traveling right away. So I got to go out to Colorado.
Which is a mixed bag, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
super beautiful and exciting, but then you miss your family. And
Yeah. And, as a visionary, you hear about traveling and flying for free, and you're like, oh, I could go and I could do, and I could. And you got to sit down and really think about that. And where the money was is actually not traveling for me.
Yeah.
So I get to stay home now with my family more, which
that's
is
so
beautiful.
great.
And, actually like helping companies with their dream by
Now,
giving them my dream. With
Yeah,
their
and
company.
if I can be more specific, but not too specific, it seems like there's a holdup. So each business has a process. We talk about that in our mapping episodes. What is your idea? Can you bring it? Can you prototype it? Can you make it? Do people care about it? Can they find it? Can they buy it? Can you produce it? Do they appreciate it? Can you support it? Like, there's steps there. In our industry, kind of our day job industry, there's steps. And one of those steps is really broken. Like, there's this huge opportunity, and it's like you're playing a video game and the path is beautiful. And then there's this giant insurmountable tree that just fell down. There's no pun intended for what we do. And you've really just kind of attacked that tree, basically. You're attacking that one breakdown point, which is exciting. I want to hear more about like those challenges, because it's exciting to take something on that's so big and so industry wide. But at the same time, the people who aren't visionaries, we're very disrespectful of the limitations. But people who aren't visionaries are looking at it going, well, there's a reason nobody's fixed that yet.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, right? And
Yeah.
so what's your view? I guess I'll ask this. What's your view of the fact that no one else has fixed it yet? What's your confidence level of the fact that you're like, yeah, I'll switch jobs and go take care of that real quick?
Yeah. It's kind of weird, man. I was talking to you earlier, maybe the other day, about it. When you have all these ideas and they're all not good, you really start to question.
Now, did you mean they're all not good, or they're not?
They're all not
they're
good.
not all good. Like,
they're not all
there's-
good for the company.
There's,
You're
there's
thinking through
delicious
things.
berries in
Right,
there and a
right,
bunch
right.
of rotten ones. Yeah.
Right. It's sometimes defeating and difficult for yourself when you lose. And when you have those thoughts that you're like, yeah, that thought would never work out, or that vision would never work out, but you really have to never give up on those.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I used to get discouraged and say, yeah, that would never work, and throw it away. Now I just really analyze it, and I really just think what in that system is broken and what's not, and separate those two out, and then start pursuing the things that aren't broken in the industry and that we have power control over.
So you're thinking, when you're describing that, you're kind of describing sorting, assessing, mapping, like looking at it and going, okay, the whole thing's not bad.
Right.
There's something bad about it, and you're attacking that.
Yeah.
That's rare. I mean, it sounds really obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if your dresser smells really bad and you can't figure it out, you go through the dresser, you pull everything out, you find the thing that doesn't smell good, you take it out, and then you remedy whatever you have to remedy. You don't go, this dresser's bad,
right,
and throw it out by the side of the road. But that's how we operate a lot of times. We go, no, didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Like, what do you mean? There's only a part of it that didn't work. I love that, man. And so, what about when ideas, like, how do you manage ideas that are good but aren't right now? You know what I mean? Like, know there's something to this, and but it's probably 2 years from now, or it's completely outside of what you should be prioritizing. Because those are dangerous, and they're exciting, because you get really pumped and it's really good, but I have a restaurant concept that's incredible right now. I can't start a stinking restaurant. That's insane. This is enough. But it tugs at me every day, because it's that's such a good idea, but it's not the right time.
Yeah.
How do you manage those?
Well, it's just is there any opportunity for this idea to come to life in the next 6 months?
You set kind of a timeline.
Is there any? Yeah. And there's things I'm looking at a year and a half from now, I'm 100% I'm going to do, but I can't. Yeah. If I did it right now, it would be the wrong time, and it would ruin it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to say about the timing of things.
Totally.
But for me personally, I think within the 6 months, is there any way for this to get started or come to life?
That's great, man. I did that poorly early on. I chose hourly work over some really great concepts. I remember when I was 15 and a half, I got my driver's license, my permit, and I was immediately like, how do I make money with this car? I just was just I have this incredible life-changing asset now. Yeah. It's 1996 Honda Ford, or Honda. No way. I wasn't living that Honda life. It was a Ford Taurus. It was a red 96. And I was like, how do I make money with this? And I remember thinking before the App Store, or around that time, or people weren't aware of it, I'm going to go deliver food from restaurants that don't deliver. And my parents and everybody else who are absolutely correct said, I remember the discussions with 8 people, and I remember them saying there's no money in that. What are people going to buy a $2 burger and then flip it? So your boy had Uber Eats, right? I was sitting on it. If I had sat on that and kept it and said, okay, there's a couple broken things here. Yeah. It's not the right time. When I did see the App Store, I wouldn't have made one thing. I would have made that, and I can confidently say I would have, because I never once thought of that idea again until way, way later. And you don't get credit for having an idea that someone else executes. I get that. Yeah. But holding on to that stuff for a while, you don't know when it's gonna go. Yeah,
for sure. And I think something to touch on that is I am very intentional about my relationships in a way that I understand that me and you are friends, but I understand you're very gifted in what you can do. So if you remember when you first came on my team, I figured out everything you could do, and I started asking for little random things. Yeah. And I said, hey, I couldn't do it, but it was in my mind to do. Yeah. And then once you fit that puzzle piece, it was okay, perfect. And I always remember those things. And I talk to owners of companies all the time, and I'll get coffee with the most random people for no reasons. Yeah. Just because I know that these visions make sense somehow.
I'm envious of you with that ability to network and to recognize people as gifted and as assets, but not as disposable assets, right? That's the hard part is I'll call somebody and I'll say, I haven't talked to them in a long time. And I'll say, hey, I've got this thing. I'm starting Renaissance. You would be really great. And if you're listening, I'm not talking about anybody specific. I'm just saying in general, because I have reached out to several people, and it feels weird because I'm clearly calling them because I need something, but I think it'll be good for them too. Yeah. And just kind of navigating that, well, why didn't we have coffee in the last 2 years? And it's I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. Yeah. It's not personal.
I think it's something of, I used to run big sales teams. I had a sales team of 100 some people. And And I always struggled when I was like 19, 20. And I struggled because you start to look at people as a number when you make money off of them.
Right.
And so if your ideas relate to money, it's very difficult to separate those two.
Yeah, the context of the relationship.
But I think if you bring it out in the open and you're honest about it, like, hey, I think there's some things I could make some money with and I would really like your opinion on it. It comes across differently than, hey, what can you do? Now, what if I give you this? You know what I mean? I think if you know I'm making money and this is my livelihood and this is how I work, and I know you make money and that's your livelihood, but some way we both could do it together. I'm fair. I'm going to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, right.
But I want you to know from the beginning, I'm going to be profiting off of this. And this is how I'm looking to make some money for my family.
What people would say normally is like, don't mix those things. And I think it is risky. Like, you know, we've tussled on some things, but the friendship is stronger than the thing. And I think I've tussled with literally everybody I've ever done business with, because at times you have to like come to a resolution on an idea or a thought. And then you have to leave that after. You have to go, okay, and now we're friends. And like, how's your family? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do have people that I would like to work with that aren't set up to handle the duplicitous nature of those relationships. And so I think that is something worth consider.
Yeah.
Oh, boundaries. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure. Harley and I work together daily, obviously. And so us putting the relationship before the work has helped us to do better work. Because we're just like, yeah, what do you want to do? I don't want to do that. Okay, cool. I'll do it. Yeah. You know, and it's really helped a lot.
How is it with specifically, I think we can talk, Harley, like he's different personality than you.
Yeah, he's much younger too.
How do you guys work together with you being a visionary? What would you say Harley is?
It's a trust thing. Well, Harley's an odd bird because he's still developing, and I don't mean that in the sense of like a middle school child.
Harley's also a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah, so. right. Very, very good friend. And I would say he probably has more people say he's his best friend than he says best friend, right? Like it's like, you know, you and I are very close to it, but like he's very easy to be friends with.
Oh, yeah.
I would be on the other side of the spectrum, and there's benefits to that. And one of the difficulties, though, is that people do not say he's easy to be a friend with at times. So your question was, how does that dynamic work? And I think I'll start with the challenge to not answer your question. The challenge is to not turn into caricatures of one another and fall into roles where we can't grow. And what I mean by that is when you have kids, we have 4 kids. If this is the smart one and this is the athletic one and this is the funny one and this is the whatever, you kind of get in that mindset. Then when this one wants to pursue academics and was doing sports, you don't really have the same fervor because that's not their character that you've applied to them. And so you got to start with like what you know for sure. Like I want my kids to love the Lord. I want my kids to be curious people. I want my kids to be people who despise prejudice and despise judging people by how they look, feel, smell, you know, all those different things, like what group they're from. You know, I don't want my kids when they even work at a company to hate the opposition company. You know what I mean? Like I want those things for my kids. And then in general, it's like finding that passion and trying to stoke it and say like, oh, you're interested in this right now? Like I'm cool that my kids all showed an interest in bushcraft in the woods. And I bought a ton of stuff and books and things, and they haven't read them in a while. I'm okay with that because we took some time there. And I think the challenge is that with a guy like Harley and a guy like me, we're so unique that it's easy to put us into buckets and be like, oh, that's the Harley thing and that's the Jeremy thing. Yeah. So what does that mean? Jeremy's the visionary and Harley's the pragmatist. That means Harley's going to make all the phone calls and emails and go to all the appointments and do the crummy work, and I'm going to do the fun stuff. Is that what that means? No, of course not. You know, so that's been a challenge. I think he had to firm me up a little bit, where like he's helped me a lot with, you know, just like account management type behaviors, because that's not my nature. I want to like solve the account management software and all that stuff. And he's really helped me there. And so we just look for opportunities to bless each other. I want to like, he's on vacation right now. And like I text him day one. I was like, hey, just so you know, this is the stuff I'm doing for you today. Most times people wouldn't text, but like they would leave him alone. But like, I'm not the guy you hire to do that stuff. And so I didn't want him to walk around with stress. And so today I messaged him and said, hey, all this stuff got done. And it's helped. And then what he does is he trusts me. When I say something, he's one of the very few people that goes, I'm a little lost. Can you help me give some context as to how that's related to what we were just talking about? And then sometimes I'll just go like, it wasn't. Like I got caught, like this little angel idea flew by and I like snagged it by the foot and ran off. Yeah. And I have to apologize. But then there's times where I'm like, oh, because you were talking about morale with this employee and this would help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like,
sure.
I think the two things would be just making sure that
I think those questions
people can grow.
are so helpful for people like me and you, because like sometimes you say something and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm
we don't
following you,
clarify a
but,
lot.
like the person next to me is not going to know, you know, and he's like, you know, just digging in deeper, digging into what you're saying. I love that.
The difference between the brilliance and psychosis, like the difference between someone who knows me and you, that knows us, you and I, and they look at us and they go, wow, that's really something. And the guy that looks at us 2 seconds later and goes, that guy's insane. Like, that is a completely useless, that guy's got to go.
Yeah.
Like, the difference is just trust, because nobody gets it. Nobody's sitting there going, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, how you're saying it, because we're never communicating perfectly. You know what I mean? So like the difference is trust. Harley trusts that I'm going somewhere, and he'll help rein it in.
Yeah.
He'll go, okay, I need to understand this. You do that with me. I do that with you. The difference with that is that most people just go, I don't get it. That's your fault. Let's move on.
Or how is this going to profit me?
How is this going to profit me? And sometimes there's more to it than that. It can't just profit you. It has to, there's a couple steps we have to go through. So yeah, man, this feels a little bit like a support group. I'm excited. A little visionary support group. Like, people don't get us, you know, you guys are stupid. We're so smart. You know,
We're the visionaries.
We're the visionaries. And you're like what I would call like, a dummy, you know. Of course, that's not what we're saying, but there's a lot of emotional frustration built in, because it can be 2 months of vision casting and the conversation bombs.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Dude, it's deteriorating. It really is discouraging.
Does it fit with like bases loaded, best home run hitter ever? It's a 2-3 count and he strikes out looking.
Yeah.
That's the feeling.
And then you have to question whether it's actually the idea or it's the people that heard the idea and they can't accept it at the time, or they can't swallow it. They can't.
Or what would the middle one be, right? Like, it's the quality of the idea, their ability to hear it, or our responsibility would be
to communicate
our
correctly.
ability to communicate it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so
that's
what
like
do you
the
do?
Most important.
Yeah, you just sit around and sulk about the fact that you don't know which it is. So
yeah, so you have one that completely bombs and they're like, no. And then you have to take it back to the drawing board. Was this me? Did I communicate it wrong? Or is it them?
And what do I adjust here? Is
Right.
it the room? Is it the communication? What is it? Yeah, it's so tricky. And I think, like I said, that's us pleading for help. You guys, as you're listening, if you're not a visionary, even if you are, sometimes vision to vision conversations are tough too. Just ask those questions. Like, what made you bring this up? What's your goal? Which part of this are you most excited about? What would be another thing? Like, oh, when you say this word, sometimes we speak in generalities and we don't realize that we've got a clear vision in our mind, but we say good looking. We don't communicate clearly. We cut that part out. And you can say, can you specifically describe to me how it'll look? Can you draw it? Can you sketch it? And by doing that, like, most visionaries won't get frustrated with you. They'll be excited.
Yeah. And I think visionaries communication sometimes can get off track because you might think of things, see something, or, you know, I think it's very important. I learned this from you, Jeremy, to set expectations at the very beginning.
Oh,
If you set an expectation, they know exactly how they should take it, which way it's going to go, in what context you're talking about.
Can you give an example of kind of how, in your life, what are some situations that you maybe wouldn't have, but you do now, and what are the differences in the outcome?
Yeah. Training specifically.
Okay.
Whenever I was training somebody, I would say, hey, Jeremy, you're going to come with me for the next 2 weeks and you're going to watch me.
And we'll figure it out.
And then I want you to look specifically at what I do and maybe take notes, and we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Now, if I take you out, I say, you know, we're going to be going to Dublin today. And while we're out there, I want you to pay attention to these 3 specific things today. What I'm saying in my intro, what's my body presence, and my soft close I'm going to give them. And if you just focus on those 3 things, we're going to talk about it later, and I'll help you become good at it.
I noticed that when we were talking to Tim. That's a really great point, man. When we were talking to a new employee that we added in the day job, and I just said to him, like, because I know it's so easy to get overwhelmed, you know, like, hey, you're going to learn this career that takes forever. And today I was like, hey, in the normal process, what's a failure is actually a success today. What I want you to do is fail.
Yeah.
In the greater context, it would be failing. I didn't say fail, but I want you to fail at this 27 times today. And you know what that is, right? I want you to get someone to do this 27 times today. And like, I'll buy you lunch, you know, like, this is a good thing. And if by the end of the day you blank, and I normally do that on the episode, I didn't do that today, but today is just kind of stream of consciousness. I wanted to
random.
get in your brain. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, man. So what has been the difference of that, of setting clear expectations for you with your people?
Yes, this is the most important part, is Back when I was doing it, we were like, watch me and we'll do it together.
Yep.
Maybe even a little wing it as we go. I feel like I had a hard time staying focused, and the person I was showing or whatnot would have a hard time retaining the information.
Yep.
And so now my time is given back to myself because I invested the time at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can still be a visionary and talk a lot and give that person a good visionary perspective.
Yes.
And train and get across the clear
But they know what a successful day is because you explained it to them.
And then they're not calling you all the time and
Yes.
saying, hey, when you were barely training me and talking to me the whole time and showing me pictures of what it would look like,
Yep.
you forgot to mention blah, 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 blah. You know,
And that was really important.
and then I had to
whatever.
go back and do it for them.
Yep.
And then I wasn't showing them then either. So I've had a really big gap in my training over the last 6 months, I would say.
I think something that's really helpful, man. Something that the Renaissance Agency is going to be doing for businesses is helping to kind of like, there's the process is you need to understand your process first. You need to map it and understand it. So the training you do, you're so gifted in it. You have so much experience. You already know what the things are. You can just pull expectations in the car on the way there. But a lot of companies don't have standard operating procedures, and everybody's kind of reporting to a different person, and the information loops. I remember one company I worked for, the process was to try to cut down on communication upward. What they did was, because there was no established wiki that was of use and things like that. So you would ask your peers, and then the peers would ask this middle manager, and the middle manager would ask the department manager, and the department manager would go find the answer. And I mean, you're talking 100 hours in a month of asking those questions. And my suggestion was, and we didn't quite get there. My suggestion was there should be a search. I mean, there's a house full of developers, so we could have done it. Anytime you have a question, you search it, knowing you're not going to find your answer. But then what we would have is we would have a rating system of the most commonly asked questions, then put those answers in the wiki. So now when you search it, there is an answer because you take the top 5. So that's what I wanted to do is use, it stunk for a while because people are typing what they want to know and they write stupid things and make fun of people and whatever. But holy cow, like if you have real answers on the left and missing answers on the right, and the right is constantly telling you what people need to know, and you can put an education team in place. It was really exciting. I was talking to one of the big startups years ago when I applied, and I had mentioned that communication and education are the same. Like it should be the same department. And I don't think I had anything to do with it, but it's fun to imagine like 5 years later, they just opened up a communication and education director at the role. And I was like, okay, maybe that coffee shop conversation, the job I didn't
thought
get.
Of me. They probably did.
No, I doubt they thought of me, but they might have like had a seed of an idea in the back of their mind. It's kind of fun.
For sure.
But yeah, what are some tips for people who, because here's the short answer. You're a visionary. You're not disciplined yet. You being whomever's listening and us, we're not disciplined as much as we could be. Things are constantly popping into your head. They're moving around. You're trying to sort them, decide who to talk to. It looks a lot like ADHD, but it can be, and maybe it's not ADHD. Maybe it's a giftedness. And you got to begin the process of managing those things. And I'm just going to throw a gauntlet out there. Y'all can't live without visionaries. So I know they're annoying. I know they're frustrating at times.
Yeah.
You need them. Everything you use, you pick up, you talk about, everything had vision involved in it. So what's your advice to like some young visionaries, maybe somewhere on the spectrum of ADHD or hyperactivity or excitement, something like how we struggle with like just choosing and prioritizing our time all the time. What's your advice to that young Mike or that young Susan who needs some help today?
I would say, first off is to be patient with people. Majority of my beginnings of when I was starting my career, getting with companies, I was not good at communicating, and they did not understand my vision, even though it was good, because I wasn't able to communicate it right, or maybe they weren't able to handle it. But just be patient with yourself, be patient with the discouragement of not having success, and then ultimately enjoy the beauty of when it comes to fruition, even if it's very, very slightly. We're doing a podcast right now. Like, embrace that, enjoy it, and live in that, because that's what
cool
it's all
moment.
about. We're trying to build this huge thing, whatever. It's all about the building process. And this is beautiful just as much as $1 million podcast studio that Joe Rogan has.
Oh, thank you,
For
Joe.
sure.
If you're listening, you're on notice. No, I'm kidding.
You're on
you know
next.
what's really funny about the visionary thing? I was laughing because I was getting some counsel from my friend Dylan, who has a very successful podcast. He'll roll his eyes when I say that, but it really is. He's in the top percentile in terms of like the fact that most people just don't even continue the show. Like they get to 10 episodes and they quit because that was like their whole life story. It's 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And I I really want to get past 10 because that's like one of those barriers, And I was talking to him, and I get compared with Joe Rogan a little bit. He's a better listener than I am. I'm working on it. But I told him, I was like, stream of consciousness like he does is not the right format for me. Like, people will die. Their veins will pop out of their head. They'll use it in like torture chambers and things like that. The difference between a well-portioned, well-thought-out, thing and like just going on and on and on, he can do that. I'm not wired for that. So these episodes are going to be pretty concise. This is about as free as we're going to be. And it's going to be, 20, 35, 40 minutes because it's just how we're wired, man. Like we're not wired to go on for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's like
you got a good 40 minutes in me, and then it's like
yeah, like our internal clocks both started ticking like 20 minutes ago. And that's okay. I think portion is really important. Another thing to encourage young people with is 2 things from me. Number 1 is start supplementing your giftedness. Okay. You can't walk around and just pretend that because you have ideas, you have value to people. Okay. You have intrinsic value from your creator, but you don't have value to the company just because you have good ideas.
Correct.
You have to figure out how to communicate them, and you have to start filling your mind with well-tested information. As you begin to build these ideas in your head, it has to be on the building blocks of things that are well-established. Things like being lean and just in time and not having waste and mapping and asking good questions. These are things, and understanding, seeking understanding before seeking answers. You're going to end up being the architect that builds for a customer that's beautiful and find out that they have a mobility limitation and they can't get in the house. That's going to happen to you if you don't really focus on understanding. The second thing is like, just start cutting your portions down. I made a little video today on the Instagram Reels, IGTV, whatever. I'm learning all this stuff, TikTok or whatever. And it was about seasonal depression. And I just talked about, it's real short. I just talked about the fact that like, you need to get up and make something. Like, I don't care if it's a waffle, like get up and make something and do something. And like Mike said, just enjoy that you're doing this thing. And like, for me, it's cleaning and organizing and going like, hey, I don't have to drink out of a plastic cup because I bought the Starbucks cup that I really like. And that's really dumb, but like, I enjoyed that. Yeah. And then when I put this away, I went, man, I worked hard for this. This is kind of cool that I have this. And practice gratitude and organizing my things, which help me organize my thoughts. But yeah, man, you can't just walk around saying you're an idea guy. Like, agree. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, we both did it. We both did it in our 20s. Like, you don't understand how valuable this idea is.
You go from...
We went hard on the analysts and stuff. Now we got to go at the visionaries a little bit.
Yeah. You got to be... You got to have that confidence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But eventually, if what you're saying is true in the visions, you know, you have it down, you'll be able to talk about it after it came to life. But at times you have to get good about communicating what it will be. You know what I mean?
You're selling on possibilities, bro. You know what it reminds me of is these really cocky fighters in basketball guys. Like, fighter is a great example.
Like Jake Paul.
Yeah, bro. Well, Jake Paul's interesting because he knows him getting killed in the ring makes him $100 million. Oh, yeah. And so he's being smart about it. But you see these arrogant guys, high school games, college games, kind of LaMelo and those guys had that moment. Now, although he's been balling out, man.
Oh,
he's been so fun to watch.
Ooh, no-look
I can't believe it.
Crazy.
Yeah, the Magic Johnson type stuff. And like, but here's the point.
The jump shot, though. Oof.
You can talk about how great you are, and maybe you need that inner confidence and drive to do that. But at some point, you're going to put your gloves on and have to actually be able to fight this dude or actually be able to make the shot. So if you're out there talking about how great your shot is and you have a good practice and the team signs you and you start shooting 12%, you have to go figure out what's wrong with your shot. And you got to do it fast.
Yeah.
And so that's the visionary thing, guys. If you're starting your business early or you're starting your business late, you have to be relentless in, it's cool to talk about it, but you have to have a room like this. And it can be a closet. It can be one chair in your room or whatever. You have to have somewhere you can go, I got to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And you can't go there to be depressed and roll up in a ball.
No,
you got to get to work.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The beautiful part of it is like majority of the success is going to come from what people will never, ever, ever see.
That's right.
Ever see.
That's right.
And, I love that.
I got goosebumps when you just said that. Yeah, I hate it and also love it. The reality of the situation is I've been talking about the Renaissance Agency and Renaissance Radio for 2 years. I've been intellectually investing in it and dreaming about it. And when I dream, I'm dreaming in terms of like measurements, lists, and
sound quality.
Yeah. And it's not that I'm smarter. It's just, I couldn't get it out to people. And then as I talked about it, 3 weeks ago, people didn't know what I was talking about. You know what I mean? And now it's like you can see the microphone, you can hear it, and I've got the links profile where you can go to it, and it's like,
Came to life, yeah.
oh, okay. But if I was younger, I would have suffered that entire 2 years and gone like, why don't people get it? And I would have put all my energy into people getting it.
Literally thinking into existence things.
Yeah. I mean, do you find that too? Like in your earlier days, a lot of your energy was trying to get people to get it and not actually making it?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, what at its worst, what would be the percentage of energy thinking about how to get someone to get it versus actually building it? At your worst in your whole lifetime, what would the percentage be? Like for me, I would say I've gone so bad where I've spent 80 to 90% of my energy just running around like a needy child trying to get people to understand it. And 10% of the time fixing it. Whereas this last year has been more 1% getting people to get it and 99% actually building it.
Yeah.
What would you say in your lifetime?
Man, I think for me, this last 6 months has been the best 6 months of my life.
The ratio's much better now.
So I would say up until 6 months, I think that I didn't get it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It took a while for me to get it
Yeah.
before I could have other people get it. And I thought I had it together and I thought I got it. But,
Yeah.
you know, there's revelations that we get.
Yep.
And you got to work on those.
Yeah, man. It's so tough because you're walking around with this thing and you're telling people it's a tree, and it is a tree eventually.
Mhm.
But right now it's this little tiny sapling that's like so delicate and can be crushed. And I told my friend that I really trust his opinion. I'm sending him episodes to get some feedback. And I already know after I've recorded this, like what I did wrong. And I'm so annoyed. And I told him, I was like, hey, on this feedback, just so you know, I'm really excited to get your opinion, but I need to protect my spirit right now. So as you give feedback, keep in mind, like my hope in this is more delicate than it normally would be.
For sure.
The confidence you hear on the show, the confidence you see in the production value is not the confidence I'm walking around with yet.
Yeah.
It will be, but it's not yet.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him that, which is kind of weird because it's like so counter to how I carry myself.
Yeah.
But I just, for every overhead shot of me working in here, there's a slow motion shot of me just laying my head on my desk going, what am I doing?
Oh, for sure.
What the heck am I doing?
For sure.
So tell me, what's something, and you may not have anything right now, and we'll circle back to it as we wrap the show up. What's something that you'd like to bring a little awareness to the audience? It can be a thought, it can be an idea, it can be a cause or a mission, or it can be a business. What's something that you think people should know about?
Specifically related to Visionaries,
Okay.
I would say timing is everything.
Yep.
You're going to have great ideas, and it's not going to be the right time for them. The Bible says, hide them in your heart. That's what I like to talk about, is hiding those visions in your heart. If it's true and it's going to play out and it's as big of a vision as you think it is, it's not going to leave quickly.
Yeah, that's great, man. And the idea that you're, I think of the G League basketball players. There's a lot of basketball in my mind right now because of the difficulty. To like even compete at the men's Z League at the gym is hard if you're not putting the work in. So you see these guys that fight their whole life and they're in the G League and they're not spending their time soliciting the A League coaches. They're spending their time working on their game. And like they have a vision of playing in the NBA and they're just waiting for the right time and the right team and focused on, and it's tough, man. Yeah. It's tough. So hang in there. I think that's a really good idea. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really enjoyed that. We'll definitely have to have you back. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. You know that personally. You're a dear friend, and I think of you often. And so I think I can't wait to have you back again. Maybe we'll do something on basketball. You happen to be quite a baller, by the way. Yeah. You still got your basketball body. I can't tell you're wearing fluffy clothes. Are you playing?
I'm starting back in a league here in a week or two.
Oh, so, man. I can't breathe. I'm decent as a role player. I'm not a one-on-one player. Yeah. I'm decent, but I can't breathe. So I got to get out there and start getting my cardio back. And I won't dribble. I'm not going to dribble.
That's okay.
I'm just going to, I'm going to post up bigger guys than me. I'm going to give them problems and I'm going to pass. I'm going to dish, that's how it is. Sorry, bud. All right, man. Well, I'm going to wrap this thing up. We're going to quit right at 45 minutes. This is perfect. And I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for your encouragement to the Visionaries. Thanks for some insight to the people who maybe aren't. If you're a parent and you got a kid like this, help them execute, man. Just help them execute. Help them clarify their vision. Like when you see excitement in their eyes, keep it. Don't care about the idea. Just look them straight in the face and go, that sounds awesome. I don't understand it. You're so smart. Both of us will probably cry thinking about that because it's just, I mean, it's just so hard as a kid. And so just keep doing that, guys. As you see your kid that's a visionary, look them straight in the eye and say, that's amazing. Why did you bring that up? How do you think that'll help? How can I help? When's the first time you want to try it? How do we test it? Is there a book I can get you that'll help you understand it better? That's the job. That's the job. So, all right. Love you guys. And thanks for listening to Renaissance Radio. We'll talk to you real soon.